OctoDice is a game that I learned about a month ago, and it had a couple of things that made it interesting to me. It is the dice version of Stefan Feld's Aquasphere, which is a game that I enjoyed very much. That alone is something that made me curious. It has a solitaire option, and I always like to have that in my games. At the time, and I think still at the present time, it has been released in Europe, but not in the US, which per se is not a plus since I live in the US, but I was planning to come to Europe to visit my parents in Italy. So what happened is that I ordered a copy from Germany. I had it shipped to my parents' house, and that is where I'm filming right now. And I'm also keeping my voice low because it's late at night after I played this game for a couple of hours. Everybody else is asleep. I'm trying not to wake up everybody. So it will be released in the US soon, I believe. For now, Europeans get a chance of playing it before Americans do. OctoDice. Also, I should preface, I only played solitaire, but in this review I'm going to tell you about both ways of playing in multiplayer and solo. And then I'll share some impressions after playing quite a long string of games. What do we have here? In the middle of the table we have these tiles. They're double-sided. They represent different upgrades for your lab. The theme is the same as Aquasphere. The players are scientists. They work in an underwater lab, and they are upgrading their technologies. They are programming bots to execute actions. They are programming submarines that will be used by the bots. They're analyzing crystals, and they're fighting against octopods that simply clutter the system and make things less efficient. So we have these 9 tiles that form a grid in the middle of the table with different technologies. You can mix and match the different sides, and also you can move them around as long as you form a grid with 3 levels. One is level 0, one is level 1, and one is level 2. You still can have a lot of different configurations. And yes, different horizontal configurations do match because you have to think of the board of the grid as 3 columns. Each player has 4 color cubes. One goes in front of the player, just to indicate which player has which color, and then there is a cube on top of each column for each player. Then we have the dice, 2 types of dice, black and white dice. The white dice have 5 symbols representing possible actions and 1 symbol representing the pesky octopods. The other type of dice, the black dice, have colors and numbers, and whether you use the color or a number of the face of the die that you're using depends on the kind of action you're performing. And again, one side is devoted to the pesky octopods. Also, each player gets a sheet from this nice pads, a couple of sheets I used already. The sheets are double-sided. They look really nice, and they look a little busy, but it won't be too hard to see how they work. Now, how does a turn work? At the beginning of your turn, you roll all 6 of your dice. You look at what you have. Then you set aside any 2 dice. Suppose that I decide to set aside these 2 dice here. You roll the other 4. You set 2 of them aside, and then you roll the other 2, and you add them to your pool. So you don't have that flexibility that you have in other games, rerolling all of your dice up to 3 times, etc., etc., etc. What you roll is what you get. Well, in most cases, you do get to reroll some dice, but actually even the rerolls are mandatory. Now, you end your rolls with a pool of 6 dice that you will need to spend to perform actions. You can perform up to 2 main actions, and each action requires the combination of a white and a black die, so there's a lot of flexibility there. And let me show you the possible actions. If you have a diamond and you combine it with a black die, you perform one of these actions, you cross it on this pad, and once a section is full, you cannot perform that action anymore. So a diamond will immediately score your number of points equal to the number of the black die associated with it if I'm performing a diamond action, well, is analyzing the crystals action, cross that, and I gain a point, which I record here. Remember, you have 2 main actions per turn, so you have 2 areas here where you record how many points you score, and you also record a 0 if you are performing an action that doesn't give you any points at the present time, or you're not performing an action because maybe the combination of dice is such that you can't. So, analyzing crystals, you get points immediately. Technology tree, super neat. You simply this time look at the technology symbol like this one, and then the color, and you simply cross a space and you gain the corresponding number of points, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But you have to do that in order. This is why when I saw the yellow, I saved the yellow, and I was very happy in case I could combine it with the technology. So here I will be able to do this, maybe next time, this and this and this. And if I perform that action, I write a 1 there for my action. And remember, only 2 main actions, but I'm showing you how the game works. The bots. When you perform the bot action, you're programming a bot. This time, again, you look at the color and you program a bot of the corresponding color. In this case, I'm programming a red bot. It's my first bot, so I check that space there. That scores me a point, which I mark again in that area. If I already had one, this action would allow me to program this red robot here that gives me 2 points. You can also program submarines in the same way. This way you look, this time you look at the submarine symbol and the color, you program the corresponding one. You score no points at the present time, but you will possibly score points later. This symbol here allows you to develop your technologies here to upgrade your lab, and you associate that symbol this time with a number. So you can move one of your cubes to the corresponding number. Again, moving top to bottom without skipping places, without skipping spots. So to start a technology development in one of the columns, you need first a 0. So this would allow me to move any one of these 3 cubes in one of these spaces and to get the corresponding ability. If I spend it like this, I get this ability which allows me to turn a yellow result into another number or color. If I were to take this ability, I can use this symbol as a bot. This allows me to use a sub as a bot. This allows me to get an extra point when I take a sub action. Different things. And usually, and sometimes they score you points immediately, but that's where mainly they give you actions and other abilities that allow you to score points later. So I perform my actions here, and then at the end of my turn, I also check to see if I score points with the octopods. That represents catching octopods. Catching octopods is something that either you don't do at all or you do seriously, and that's intermediate things don't work very well. Octopods don't give you actions immediately, but each time that you have an octopod, when you're performing actions, you cross the octopod from here. The game lasts 6 turns if you're playing it multiplayer, and it's divided in 3 thirds. And at the end of each third, you score and you check if you had at least 2 octopods. You need to do your part in removing the octopods that are annoying everybody from the equipment. So if at the end of a third, which is after turn 2, turn 4, and turn 6, you have produced at least 2 octopods, you do not have to suffer the -2 penalty. So basically you cross the octopus that you have, and if you have at least 2, you also cross that space, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. But if you rolled at least 2 octopods in the same round, you also score some points for the extra effort that you put in the task. So rolling 2 octopods in the same turn scores me a point, 3 in the same turn, 3 points, and so on and so forth. If you only have octopods, you get 7 points, but you have done nothing else that round. So this is how a round works. I do my little things, my rolling, perform my actions, adjust situations, circumstances, records what I've done here, and check and record here the points that I scored with action 1, action 2, and possibly the octopods. Repeat that for 6 times. But you see there's a space here. This allows me to copy the people's dice during the player's turns. So I can look at the dice and I can tell them, well, I'm going to use this and that, and I perform my action. I record here all the action, I record it wherever, and then here I record the result. So that is good because the game is in essence a multiplayer solo, but for this aspect here that keeps you involved because you're seeing what other players are doing, and so you're trying to exploit their results. Maybe that will give you a chance of getting ahead of the technology tree, which is kind of a bottleneck. It's very restrictive. It's not easy to advance on this technology. That's not really a tree, it's a pole. So if you have other players' dice that you can copy to perform this, that's a good thing. Same thing here if you're advancing, you want to advance on a specific column. The main difference between the multiplayer solo and the solo is that, well, you cannot copy the player's actions, of course, and also the game lasts 9 turns. It is still divided in 3 thirds, but you use the third row of each third as the row for your third turn. At the end of each third, you check to see if players have lost 2 points because they haven't done the minimum necessary to be in good standing as octopus catchers. Also, this is when you finally score the submarines that give you nothing when you perform the submarine action. So simply, for each submarine that you have, you gain points based on the number of bots that are working on the same submarine. So if I have a submarine there, if I have a red submarine and 0 bots, I get 0 points. A bot, give me a point. 2 bots on this line, give me 2 points. And that is for each submarine. So a combo of two bots, any submarine, is a good one because it pays off at the end of the thirds. We play through the 3 thirds, then there is a final scoring in which in the multiplayer game, also the player that invested the most in analyzing crystals gets 4 points, second player 2 points. You don't score those points in the solitaire game. But in the multiplayer solo, that is interesting because analyzing crystals is not that interesting because it doesn't give you a long-term effect unless, of course, in the multiplayer game you're using that. Then also, at the end of the game, in the final scoring, you look at these abilities here. The level 2 abilities will give you scoring abilities at the end of the game. For example, this one gives you points for each space of this time that you crossed. That is, each time that you did your minimum, at least your bare minimum in this category. This one is an interesting one. For each row that you crossed, you gain points. This one, for each column that you completed, you get 3, 5, or 7 points. Different symbols will give you different things, but that means that you have invested quite a lot in this area here. You total the points from your thirds. The thirds is also when you simply tally all the points that you have here. You add this one, this score here, subtract this one. So you will have a tally for each third. You add those together with possible points from the end, and you have your final score. And the player with the highest score is the winner of the game in the multiplayer game. For the solitaire game, and this will be a bummer for many, you're simply playing against your previous score. You're playing to see how high you can go. There isn't even like a suggested amount that if you beat that, you should feel good about yourself. Below that, you kind of suck, and etc., etc., etc. Above an enormous, incredible result, you're a god or a cheater or both. So it's completely subjective. You decide how well you did. I know that I have a game in which I went to 38, another game in which I went 9, so I know which one I feel good about. This is the game, and I played it solo only, that's my disclaimer, and I liked it a lot. This is immediately and easily one of my favorite small, portable solitaire games. Incidentally, it could be much smaller. This box is inexplicably thick, as you can see from this completely useless insert here, which is just for the pads. But then you have these tiles, the rule book, the dice. The box could be this small, this thin, and that would be even more portable. Actually, probably when I bring it with me, because I'll bring it with me when I travel. This is a fantastic solo portable game. I'll simply dump the components in a plastic bag, forget about the beautiful and really witty box. Too bad it won't travel with me, but the game will, because it's hard to find a dice game that feels, different from the run of the mill, that doesn't have the usual mechanics, the usual roll, re-roll, etc., etc. Oh, there's the bad result that is locked. Here, all dice that you roll get locked. At least you get a chance of choosing which one you lock. And it's fun because you have that tight restriction of having to lock some of your dice every time that you roll, but some flexibility because you do not know yet if this is the situation and I lock these, if then effectively I will use these on this track, but maybe I'm keeping an option open in case I get a bot or a submarine that I need to use that die for there. And then actually things turn out to be really annoying and things don't work, and maybe I have a high result that I wanted to use for one submarine. I have, say, a 2 white. I want to use it for the submarine. It doesn't work, but I got a crystal and a 2. They're still not too bad. So I like the fact that during the game, during each turn, early on, you have possibilities based on what you lock, and you can decide to go for one strategy or keep your options open depending on various circumstances. You probably want to have a mix of short-term scoring and long-term scoring, even though the game in which I scored the most, I did horribly in the first third because of simply setting things up, and then in the second and third things paid off, and that allowed me to have a large score. So going for the long-term strategy is definitely the most important thing in this game. But you need to find the balance, and then there will be times, usually you're running away from the octopods if you're good things to do. And maybe the first time that you rolled, however, maybe you reached the end of your technology tree, you did very good, and so that action is not available. Some actions are not that interesting anymore. And you roll 2 octopods at the beginning, well, maybe you know what, maybe you'll lock those 2, because chances you'll get at least another one are high, maybe even 2. And then the scoring all of a sudden, if nothing else is available, becomes interesting. The octopods have a very interesting role in the game, because they can penalize you if you completely forget about them, they can give you good points if you concentrate on them, and there are game effects that also will give you extra points when you gain points from them. When you have enough to score points, then you get an extra point if you have this technology here. This is another interesting element here, huge replay value due to the different configurations that you have here. And the interaction of all the things is really tight, is really smooth. Things go together well. I find the decisions to be interesting, the luck element to be very strong, as it is usually in dice games. You have more of that element than in other types of games, but here with enough decisions that not in every case you'll be able to blame Lady Luck if your performance was poor. In some cases, yes. In other cases, if you're honest, you will see that maybe you committed too much to one strategy or not enough to a strategy. So I like it. It has interesting decisions. It does have those crazy moments due to completely unpredictable die rolls. But it has a good balance between the decision level that you have, the space of decision that you have, which is vast and significant. And on the other side, yes, there's a balance between that and the random elements that you have to deal with and that you have to try to control as much as possible, which you can to a degree based on the decisions that you make as you're locking dice during each turn. Fun. As I said, I only played solo and I liked it a lot that way. I would recommend it even if you don't think you'll ever play with everybody else. Even as a solo, is very strong. I cannot imagine that the game is made worse by this element here. I don't think it's a game that gives you much analysis paralysis because the decisions are interesting, but not a bazillion possible decisions. So, and even if there is analysis paralysis, there's a player that is annoying, you're still looking at their dice very intently, and there's still something for you to do. There's still decisions that you're making based on your ability to copy their dice. So even that possible element that I cannot judge, I've been playing the game only by myself, which is downtime. I think that there is a mechanic here that addresses it, and that I cannot imagine the game not working very well as a multiplayer game too. OctoDice, really fun game. I enjoyed it as a solitaire game. I recommend it as a solitaire game, and I think I can recommend it as a multiplayer game too.